Got it. Okay. And I gotta make this bigger.
Okay.
Morning,
hold on.
Rabbi.
Good morning, everyone. Hello.
Good morning.
We had, I think, a really interesting meeting yesterday with Rabbi Michael Bayo of
Yes,
the East Valley JCC. And for those who were there, they saw it was really quite exciting. How is everyone this morning?
Okay.
good, good, good. Bernie, good morning, good morning.
Now you're not the only guy on the screen, Steve.
I know, that's okay. Good company.
I'm just trying to get used to the change in our codes and everything.
Babette?
Wait a minute, I'm,
He's working on it.
She's
Okay,
struggling.
okay, wait a minute,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go in through a Zoom link here, okay, and see if this works, okay?
uh,
She had not gotten
Yeah, that's something.
the new code email. She didn't open it, I guess.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna try again, and then I'll stay on with the cell phone.
okay,
All right, I got my prayer ready and everything here.
I don't know where Reba is.
I can't do this, it's just not working.
Okay, well, stick with your phone and we'll,
I am. No, it's, okay, I can't do it.
Did you get my email?
Listen. I'm having a little problem because I don't delete enough things,
Oh, you gotta keep
I
up.
know what that's like, I know what that's like.
you know, and it's an issue. It's an issue. I'm trying.
No, you're fine, don't worry about it.
I'm trying. It's trying and I'm trying.
Let us go ahead and begin. Everyone, once you join us later can, catch up.
Yep.
Let's begin with the blessing together. Baruch atah
Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lazot divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the world, who sanctified us with your commandments, commanded us to engage in the words of Torah. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, Rabbi.
Amen.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We're a small group this morning. And so I think are we on Perek Aleph, the burden of leadership? Is that correct?
No, Bet,
Bet.
Bet,
What happened at Mount Sinai?
page
Okay.
47.
And,
Okay.
and hopefully we'll get soon a updated list of the coming weeks because we were out. Okay, so we're on page 47, Perek Bet, what happened to Mount Sinai? This is Parshat Yitro.
We have 2 more weeks left on the list we have.
Do we? Okay.
Yes,
Oh, and I won't be here the next 2 weeks, folks.
There's.
okay.
And this is one of the most important parshas in the whole Torah. And the problem is for this Friday, I'm talking about the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. And that doesn't leave a lot of time for talking about Parshat Yitro, which is, as you know, the revelation at Mount Sinai. So in this week, Moses goes up to the mountain and God gives him the 10 commandments, according to some versions. What is revelation? What happened up there? What did the people react? All of this is somewhat unclear. And that is our job over the next few minutes to clarify what happened up there, or in Harvey Field's words, what happened at Mount Sinai. Bernie knows, but the rest of us have to figure it out.
Was he
Not
there?
that old.
Bernie was young when he was there, so he may not remember everything. But the rest of us have to learn from the text. And so obviously this is the first issue, is that on one hand, if you're at an event, picture an event that was maybe unclear what happened. I mean, just, like when the board has a big fight, let's say, 10 minutes after the meeting ends, there's at least 3 versions of what happened. And so a certain person says, well, Shmuel said this. And then in another part of the city, the 2 people are talking and somebody says, Shmuel says that, and it's different. And that's 10 minutes afterwards. And that's when they were there at the meeting. Here we're trying to reconstruct what happened in Mount Sinai thousands of years later from one written document, or 2 written documents that are very sort of short and don't give a lot of detail. I mean, it's not adequate, right? We need an eyewitness. And so that's why I'm disappointed that, Bernie doesn't remember so well what happened, because, we're relying on you, Bernie. Otherwise, how do we know?
Yeah, but Bernie was an infant back then, so,
Yeah,
So you're saying that he's not a reliable witness because
no, he's not a reliable witness, not
he
at all.
really didn't have the capacity at the time to really, understand what he was seeing. Bernie.
Does it really matter what
I
actually
was just
happened?
gonna say that, yeah.
The
What
important
difference
thing
does it
is that
make?
we have the 10 Commandments, and that's several thousand years ago, a guideline for living that we still use today.
Well, that's the flip side, that what does it mean to us today? It doesn't matter what happened then, it matters what it means to us. So that's the flip side. So you can play either side. The reason I started this way is because the name of this parak is What Happened at Mount Sinai, which indicates that Harvey Fields has some interest in what happened. But if Evelyn is correct and Bernie is correct, then we shouldn't even worry what happened, because A, we can't reconstruct it, and B, we don't really care to reconstruct it. So let's say God said X, and then 3,000 years later, we want Y. So religion evolves, and there's a very famous story in the Talmud where it says exactly that the Torah was given to people, and it's up to us to shepherd that process. Religion is supposed to change. There's progressive revelation. Have you heard that expression? This is a reform expression. So revelation is, God revealing truth. And progressive revelation means that this goes on in the course of time. So it's not a one-time event that God revealed something at Mount Sinai and that was it. Revelation from God goes on. Therefore, if Riva is out in the forest, in surprise, somewhere in the forest, and she, comes to a revelation that she feels has divine essence to it, that is part of progressive revelation. And she comes into religious practices meeting and she says, we should all blow whistles when the Torah is taken out of the ark, because who is God to say that that's not legitimate? So God say, no, that's not what I intended. And Riva will say, it's great to hear from you, God. I love you very much, but the Judaism's been given over to us. It's our responsibility. And if we feel that something is true to ourselves, that's what's important, not what you God intended 3,000 years ago. And God will say, okay, I hope you do a good job. I'll keep watching. So, okay, so that's progressive revelation. Okay, any short opening pointed comments that anyone would like to make about this before we start the text? Pam? Nothing.
Yeah, no, Rabbi,
Yes.
what you just said intimates that we are free to change as the culture and mankind has changed his way of living. And I don't think that's really what you meant to impart. There is the Torah, we believe it, we want to behave accordingly, but it's not cast in stone. There are changes that occur as the years have gone by, but it doesn't mean that we should pick and choose. And in a sense, you might say the Reform does pick and choose, as opposed to the Orthodox, who take it as gospel and don't change anything. But at the same time, where is that fine line where you can accommodate to everything?
There's two comments in there that Evelyn just made. I'm going to take them separately. One is about the Orthodox and one is about us, and they're really, I think, quite separate. So let me take the Orthodox first. Judaism developed tremendously from the time of the Bible, the time of the Talmud is over 1,000 years. It completely changed. What the Orthodox do is they take Judaism as it developed in a particular period around 200 CE, about 1,800 years ago, and they say no more change. But the Bible proves that there were huge changes before that they refuse to acknowledge. So orthodoxy is simply wrong. And the things they say are so ridiculous that it's hard not to roll one's eyes when they say this is the way it always was. The more astute Orthodox will say, Judaism hasn't, this is our Judaism, we've had this for over 2,000 years or for almost 2,000 years. That's more honest because that's more or less true. But if you go into the Bible, you can see that what they're saying is completely, what the Orthodox is saying is completely false. This is not what Judaism originally was. Judaism developed tremendously for a long time. So, but at a certain point, Talmudic Judaism developed, and that's what they are continuing exactly the way that it was around 200, despite the fact that they're ignorant, deliberately ignorant of many things. In terms of reform, this is the big problem. I was hoping that Evelyn would not expose my weak underbelly here. Where is that line? I have my line for Reform Judaism, but unfortunately, almost the entire Reform movement has just run roughshod over that line a long time ago. And they're going far beyond what I thought was reasonable, and they don't care. So I'm stuck between the Orthodox, who are insane, and the Reform, who are extreme. And I've been more or less left behind as a religious movement of one person. And so my next book will be my view of Reform Judaism that no one else accepts, but that's the truth and should be the true way.
Oh, good luck.
And I'm sorry that not only the head of the Reform movement thinks I'm crazy, but that 98.9% of Reform Jews think I'm too conservative, and 1.1% think I'm too liberal. And so, but I think I have 8 or 9 followers in my Torah study, and then we'll do a poll here and we'll find, no, I only have 2 or 3 followers. But that's the way things go. Modern society is developing very fast. If you go with it, you go real extreme. If you reject it, you are extreme by definition. Riva.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that within Reform Judaism, there's a spectrum of beliefs. And then you pick up everybody.
Okay. So you don't think that the situation is as dire as I'm presenting it?
Right.
Okay, well, I wanted to be a little bit drama here to keep people awake. I see some of your eyelids getting heavy, so I thought I would over exaggerate just a little bit. Evelyn, do you wanted to respond? Okay, Riva?
Yeah, there's some people who have had trouble getting into this link today. And so if you're one of the people who've received phone calls related to that, the answer is look at the email that arrived yesterday, the 7th, from the Temple or from Charlotte. It includes a lot of yellow highlighting in it. At the top of the page, not at the bottom of the page, at the top of the page, there's a Zoom link that works.
Well, it didn't work for me on my computer. It worked on the cell phone.
Okay, because some people were locked out.
Yeah. The one that I received was from Steve Bold. And that was yesterday afternoon, I think it was.
Came in on the
He's one that
7th.
Created the new link.
Why
That's
did we have to
that's the
change
correct
things?
one.
I had Charlotte's and it worked fine. so.
Yeah, I got
Why
Charlotte.
did we have to change things?
There were some issues with YouTube, or not YouTube, but Zoom. The link, I couldn't get it on yesterday, so that's why we had to change it.
And I spoke to Charlotte and Steve this morning. And it was essentially the same response, that the
Yeah.
one with highlighting is the correct
Correct.
link.
That's for
Right.
the phones though. Yeah, but the Zoom, the meeting ID Zoom link, that one works. Yeah. Oh, there's Lorraine coming in.
Okay.
I'm here.
Other comments? Good
Welcome.
morning. Marcia or Minya?
By the time I got done reading this portion, I was like, but whatever, it was almost, believe what you want to believe kind of thing, So, because he fluctuates back and forth for 5 pages there, and it just, it was a little, I was not happy with it.
But so do you see my point that Harvey Fields wrote this 40 years ago? In those 40 years, the
True.
reform movement as a whole has moved way to the left theologically and politically as well. And that I see this as a problem, but Riva didn't think this was a problem. Do you see this as a problem? No. Okay. Okay.
I think unfortunately or not unfortunately, the whole, all of civilization's things have changed, except if you maybe go into the Orthodox or the very, very Orthodox Muslims who just hang to whatever, their original beliefs were in their religion.
Well, even there, that I don't think that I don't want to get into the Muslims, but in general, none of these religions believe today what they originally believed. They believe what was eventually developed as a consensus position sometimes after the origins.
Well, even with Catholicism, you have a lot of dissent on that end,
And change the fact that the Pope is now welcoming gay people, which before they did not. This is quite a change for the Catholic Church, which was very much against
Their
them.
numbers are diminishing too.
Yeah, because our culture has changed, and religion plays less of an importance in everybody's lives these days as it did perhaps 200 years ago. And it is the state that is preeminent. The figure of the state being dominant. The state should do for us. The state should provide for us. Whereas before it was the religious groups that provided for those who were in need and those indigent and those in dire distress. And today they expect the government to do it. And so you're seeing a diminution of religion per se. It doesn't play the same sort of role that it did even before World War II, shall I say.
Even after World War II in the 1950s. So yes, it's a tremendous change. Bernie, Babette, B, Lorraine, any comments at this point? Okay, then let's start our reading. Page 47, Parshat Yitro, which is Jethro. Who'd like to read?
47.
47.
Great.
Eric,
Okay, Babette Spatz volunteers.
Okay. What happened at Mount Sinai? The giving of the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai is one of the most important events in Jewish history. It is also a moment filled with mystery. The Torah reports that while the people of Israel stood at the bottom of the mountain, they not only saw flames and smoke arising from it, but also heard the blare of horns, and felt the whole mountain tremble violently. According to the report, the people are so frightened that they remained below while Aaron and Moses climbed to the top. Afterwards, Moses descended and presented the 10 Commandments to the Israelites.
Okay, so this is a brief description of, we can go to the Torah itself and look at the text, but this may be enough. So there, God is starting to speak, and the people are frightened. And so they say, you take the dictation, Moses, and then you convey it to us. And that's the way it went. In some versions, they said that God spoke the first 2 sentences to everyone. And then the people said, stop, this is too much for us. If you were there, would you prefer to have heard the whole thing directly, even if it was a little bit uncomfortable? Or are you happy with what the Israelites told Moses to do it for them?
Personally, of course, I would have preferred hearing it firsthand and not rely on someone telling me what they had heard. On the basis of what you had just said, apropos of a temple board meeting, I don't want anything to be reported secondhand. I don't trust them, quite frankly.
People have selective hearing.
Even firsthand, you're not sure that you heard it right, not so much with your ears, but that you understood it right? People can say things, but what it means may not be so clear.
It is a personal perception as such.
Right, and a lot of it's, that's why email's so perilous. You can email me and say, for the Passover, whatever, I'd like you to do it a different way. And I can email her back 1 sentence and say, I guess that's your opinion. And depending on how you say that, I could say, I guess that's your opinion. That sounds perfectly friendly. I would say, I guess that's your opinion, which is like a nasty retort. So in email, you don't know. She won't know if I'm saying that's a good opinion or you're nuts and you're stupid. So, and even in person, she may not get she may not understand what I'm really trying to convey, even if she hears every word clearly. So it's hard. Marcia, then Evelyn.
So just apropos, we're talking to somebody recently. If you're going to the doctor and there's something important that the doctor is going to say, let's say it's a cancer diagnosis, it's good to bring a friend, because you'd hear the different people hear different things, and truthfully, the one affected their mind is like going like that about other stuff, and they don't hear all the
nuances
behind stuff that the doctor is trying to convey, or a few words here and there. So it's always good to have more than one ear listening to, set of ears listening.
Okay, now this is yeah.
The doctor could say the treatment should be fine. And one person understands it is that there's a very high chance of success. Another person say, well, I'm hopeful, but I'm very worried. Yes, Evelyn.
Okay, now this brings in videotaping a meeting or videotaping anything with the conversation so that it can be played back. And then there is no argument as to what actually happened. Now, this can be considered an invasion of privacy. However, you have security cameras outside that will show whether there is someone who is trying to invade a piece of property. Is this an invasion of privacy as such?
I
there are
don't think we want Moses with the video camera.
Well, I'm thinking of how it pertains to today's lifestyle per se. And so, but yeah, getting back to Moses, well, there was no way of even recording firsthand. As you say, there was no other witness. So how can you know what actually was divulged at that point?
Correct. Bernie.
I think that the issue is well summed up by one of my former directors who said, it's not important what you think you said, it's important what I think you said.
True, really, that's smart.
Yeah. Well, perception and
Right.
how it's received.
You have to be very careful what you say, because if, I mean, I remember when I was associate rabbi in Wisconsin, I gave a sermon on the High Holy Days, and some lady comes over to me and says, you attacked me for taking Prozac. I looked at her in complete shock, but she was insistent that I had done that. I said, what did I say? She said, I don't remember the exact words, but the lady, my friend next to me, agreed. And I don't know what to do. I mean, I said, I didn't say that. And she wouldn't let it go. She said, I'm sure you said that. I said, why would I say that?
And how do you know she's taking Prozac?
She said, Prozac's really helped me. I said, Mazel tov. I mean, I eventually just walked off. I mean, what could I do?
Wouldn't help her that day, apparently.
But
Apparently Prozac has side effects.
But they didn't
Jewish
have,
guilt.
we didn't videotape services at that point. I suppose now I could say we could watch the tape together. But do I really want to do that? Do I want to sit down with her and watch the whole tape of my sermon and argue about whether something I said, she obviously interprets something I said a certain way, but I don't feel responsible for that, but maybe I should, I don't know. Riva.
Yeah, I think there's something hugely problematic over accurately reporting on something that was said a very long time ago. You've got the time dimension. You also have the dimension of, as Evelyn alluded to, the lack of technology. Not only were there's not internet, there's not television, there's not radio, there's not microphones. And without a microphone and you're outdoors, how far can you convey a message to a large group of people? They won't be able to hear it.
But apparently God, this is said in the Torah, God was able to, God is God. So God was able to project his voice or her voice very, very far.
I just
So
want to
is it-
add more trouble. And I'm wondering if there's volcanoes in the region, because virtually all of what's
There was an
described is
earthquake.
volcanic.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke about earthquake, but I thought with what's happened this week that
Too
that
soon.
would be in bad taste. But I guess it could really literally have been a small earthquake, right?
Or volcano.
A volcano.
Yeah.
There's volcanoes in that region, aren't there?
Yes, there were a lot there.
I don't think Mount Sinai was an active volcano, but okay. So volcano or an earthquake or something else.
Smoke, fire, and noise.
Yeah, I guess the fire would come from a volcano.
It doesn't even have to be an oral speech, because truthfully, Moses could hear this in his head without God having uttered a sound, a hearable sound, as long as he knew that this is what he heard, this is this is was said to me, that's all that counts,
Hmm.
And then again, I mean, you got one guy on a mountain saying this, so you just have to take it as given. What I was confused about, when you're reading the Parsha, it keeps talking about giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, where I always thought it was the 10 Commandments. So I guess I learned something from
Yes,
it.
well, this is a big dispute, what was given at Mount Sinai. And there's some commentators that say there was nothing given at Mount Sinai. It was just a silent communication between God and the children of Israel, that there was just, you ever have a moment where you just feel this certain synergy, this complete silence, but with another person or with nature or something, there's nothing spoken.
Go away.
What? I'm sorry?
Talking to the cat.
Oh, I
Okay.
meant to turn this on.
I'm sorry. Okay.
This one.
Go ahead, Rabbi.
Okay. So there's just a silence, but it's just a sense of, wow, something just happened. So there's those who feel that. There's those that feel that the 10 Commandments were given at Mount Sinai. And in later rabbinic thinking, even though there's no evidence from the text here, which is one of many examples, back to Evelyn's comment that the Orthodox are simply, lying if they claim that Judaism's never changed, that later they said that all of the Torah, not only the entire 5 books of Moses, but all of the oral traditions were given at the same time at Mount Sinai. There's no evidence to that, but they want to make everything go backwards so that there was no change ever. Because if there was change for the first 1,000 years of Judaism, then why can't there be change in the next 2,000 years of Judaism? So they want to eliminate that option. But there was change. And so there's no way the whole Torah was given at Mount Sinai. And that, from critical scholarship, we know that there's at least 4 different texts in the 5 books of Moses, that they were not one author. They were not given all by God. It's just not true.
But a lot of this Parsha is devoted to that.
Yeah. Riva.
Yeah, it seems to me that there's a spectrum from totally liberal interpretation of everything, that everything was said that is written is literally true, to metaphorical but deeply meaningful at the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And we fall in various places in between.
Mhm.
Individually. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Because also metaphorical information, it also can be very deeply meaningful.
Mhm. Metaphorical means it's not literal, but it's meaningful.
Yes.
Okay. And so
It's important
therefore,
messages. Yeah.
can people on this whole spectrum coexist and interact?
We do.
Okay.
Well, yes and no. I mean, do the Orthodox really interact with people who are not going their way? They don't.
They
very
don't.
separate.
Yeah.
They're very separate.
They isolate themselves. They deliberately ghettoize themselves
Yes.
into their own communities as such.
Yes.
So they will not be contaminated by any
Yes.
outside thought.
Mhm. Okay. And outside thoughts would include pretty much all of our thoughts.
And television and radio.
Yeah.
I wonder why, I've always wondered why they feel that their peoples are so corruptible. Why do we have, I mean, you think that they would be able to hear and see and but hear and see things, read things without being corrupted from their basic tenets. So I don't
Yeah, but-
understand why they're so concerned
Did,
about.
did anybody do studies about the no-goodniks and the criminals in the religious community? what percentage are, whether they're muggers or robbers or cheaters or doing things with accounting as
A lot of
compared to
gossips.
the outside. Yeah, well, you see, so
No comment.
And we're being recorded too.
Yeah, I'm acutely aware of that.
we had Bernie Madoff, but he was secular.
So, but if Mount Sinai is going to be a meaningful moment for us, we have to have our own conception of what it involved, right? Okay, so Babette, you can keep reading.
Okay, from the moment until today, Jews have asked the question, what happened at Mount Sinai? Is the Torah report an accurate recording of history or a legend in which some kernels of truth are hidden? How was the Torah given? The Torah was given by portion. The Torah was not given to angels. When the Torah was given, God showed Moses all the details of Torah and all the innovations that would later be introduced by the rabbis. Moses received the Torah at Mount Sinai and handed it on to Joshua. Joshua handed it to the elders, and the elders handed it to the prophets. The prophets handed it to the people of the great assembly. That's
Okay, so,
telephone tag, right?
say again.
That's like telephone, playing telephone.
And all of these are from the same people, the sages of the Talmud, and they all say the same thing, that no, the revelation was not just silence. The revelation was not just the 10 Commandments. The revelation was everything that we consider to be rabbinic Judaism. It was all there at the beginning, and it was all passed down. It wasn't necessarily in the Bible itself, but it was verbally transmitted at the time. Nothing has changed. It just seems like it may have changed because not everything was written in the Bible, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there. And so this is the basic push of the rabbis, which I think is completely wrong. And so I guess I'm fighting with the Talmudists, on a very basic question of belief. Marcia.
Why does Torah have to be given at Mount Sinai to be considered such a base part of the religion? Why can't it be? And truthfully, it's a story that goes along in the Torah, which can't be predestined, pre-written before it even happens. I don't understand that whole concept.
Yeah, good question.
So why does the authority of the Pharisees have to stem back to Mount Sinai? Because the Sadducees were saying that the Pharisees were making stuff up. And the Pharisees were making stuff up, but they couldn't admit they were making stuff up. So they had to say, everything we're saying goes back to Mount Sinai. And it's you, the Sadducees, that are wrong. That's the basic answer. So it was and the Sadducees were saying, no, this Torah was there, and a lot of the things you're saying don't have a basis in the Bible. And they say, yes, it may not be written there explicitly, but it was there. I guess
So you have two groups or others vying for essential power, a very human trait, wanting to be the dominant voice of the people. And so this is where you get the two groups arguing with each other, and one of them is determined to become the dominant voice, and whichever one was became the dominant voice. And
right.
the others,
Well, and we don't really know to what extent the destruction of the temple and the the Roman war against the Jews, how decisive that was, or whether the Pharisees were winning anyway. That we could look up. If the temple had continued to stand, I presume there would have continued to have been multiple types of Judaism. But because of destruction and so forth, somehow we ended up with just Talmudic Judaism. And the sages, they dropped most of the Jewish books. So the only thing they preserved was Torah and the Talmudic literature. So how do we know about all these other books, Philo and Josephus and the Book of Jubilees and on and on and on? Many of them were preserved by Christians, and some of them were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and many were lost. So, but if it hadn't been for the Christians, we would have very, very little of the Jewish holy books, other than what the rabbis wanted us to have. Bernie.
You have to unmute, Bernie.
I'm trying, I'm working
There you
on
go.
it.
There you go.
I have this picture in my head of Times Square on New Year's Eve. And what would happen if this guy shows up and says, look what I got from God?
He would be laughed out of Times Square.
Behind
He would be
FD.
locked up for a
Right.
while. Why don't these things happen? My point is, why don't these things happen today?
But look at the response of the people. What were the people doing when Moses was up on the mountain?
They were
Making
making
a
a
golden
golden calf. They were not happy with their situation at all.
So how much, you're saying that if Moses tried this stunt in Times Square, people would think he was crazy.
They'd lock him up.
But at the time, people didn't think thought he was crazy at the time, right? They said, this is not the right direction. What Moses can do whatever he wants up there, but we're going to get busy doing something good, which they felt was building the golden calf. Today, they would just party and drink and whatever, but it's, both groups ignored him. So I don't think it's that different. Riva.
Yeah, I think at Times Square, if people were, Moses had something to say, I think he'd be lucky if 5 people heard him. Because you're in a very noisy environment. Unless Moses had an extraordinary sound system, he couldn't be heard by a lot of people in a noisy situation.
And if he did have a very good sound system, then
Some people would hear him.
but let's say he could broadcast throughout Times Square, what would be the response?
True, very questionable.
But
So
maybe there
people-
were 10 Moseses saying something different. Who do you listen to?
Well, there were in the book of Exodus and elsewhere, there are at least 3 revolts or 4 revolts, or there's constantly other leaders coming forward and saying, don't listen to this idiot, listen to me. Right? And then in one case, the ground swallows up the leaders of the rebels. In another case, and so God has to intervene to kill the rebel leaders. And he says, no, Moses is my guy. You got to keep with Moses. But it wasn't clear to the people that this was true. When Moses had these rebels challenge him, there'd be some that supported Moses and some that supported the rebels. I don't know what the percentage was, but it was pretty equal, maybe. Yes.
But the 10 Commandments story comes before Mount Sinai, comes before that episode with the earth swallowing up this guy. So
Yeah.
this is up front, but now Moses has led them across the Sea of Reeds, which I did try to research, but I got nowhere last week. So because we were talking about what it really was about.
When we do our trip to Israel, we're going to stop at the Sea of Reeds on the way.
Okay, let me know.
The plane will make a special stop nearby. There's an airfield now there.
But they already had followed him this far. Did they have no faith in him? And when he came back to the encampment and saw what they had done, were they not shamed, or were they just saying, "Oh, foo, you know, yeah, you and your story"? Who knows, you know?
Well, remember, these are people that are not literate.
Right.
They've just been through trauma. They were slaves. They escaped. They almost were killed by these Egyptian chariots. They're in panic mode. They're hysterical. They're in post-traumatic stress. They're in current stress. These people are in unbelievable stress. And so you can't expect them to, they barely know where they are and what's happening. So it's not like they're making a very, thoughtful analysis of Moses as a leader. It's not, I like to say it's not always personal, it may not be personally rejecting Moses. They're panicked. They're like drowning swimmers.
It's a group mentality at that point that's acting. It's not necessarily, they're not even functioning about, why they were brought across the river, et cetera,
I didn't sleep all night. Suddenly God said, leave. I followed everybody. It was cold. I didn't bring my sweater. Then there was water. I thought I was going to drown. Suddenly the water parted. It was very bizarre. The smell of the sea, the salt in the sea was very scary. I couldn't see anything. I didn't bring my cell phone was on low battery, so I didn't want to use the flashlight on it. We crossed the sea. We reached this place. There's all this fire and big noise. I couldn't sleep because the rocks, and I didn't even have a sleeping bag. I don't know what's going on, but
following a pillar of smoke across the desert.
but all I know is I want to go back to Egypt where they had good cucumbers and where I had a bed and I had a structure. I woke up at 6 a.m. and I worked for the Egyptians from 7 to 3. And then, I'm in bad shape. I can't evaluate anything rationally. Bernie?
Rabbi,
Yes.
quick comment though, didn't the encampment feel that Moses had died up on the mountain because he was up there for so long, and therefore they lost their confidence in him? And
Okay.
Joshua didn't do much either except for blowing his shofar.
Aaron was complicit too.
Aaron was there too. So
Yes. So
I mean,
okay.
I would think that if someone was up there for 40 days and nobody told you what was going on down below, you take it into your own hands, I guess.
Yes, our leader went for a meeting and he left early in the morning. By the afternoon, by 1 p.m., by lunchtime, where is he? 40 days passed. So by that time, we're sure he's not coming back. He's probably long dead. And if he's not dead, he probably stole some money and moved to Hawaii. I mean, my God, 40 days and 40 nights. Nobody's coming back. We were expecting him by lunchtime. So yeah, and Joshua wasn't terribly helpful. Aaron, he collaborated with the rebels. Why Aaron wasn't killed by God is one of the big questions. But Aaron had a lot of, God really looked at, God gave Aaron a lot of leeway in this and other things. Okay, Babette, back to you. We're on the top column, 47 on the right.
There are many differing views about what happened at Mount Sinai. For instance, Rabbi Yohanan claims that God's voice was divided into 7 voices, and the 7 voices were further divided into the 70 languages spoken by all the people of the world at that time. Other rabbis of Yohanan's time disagree. They claim that God spoke with a single voice. Rabbi Isaac taught that the message of all the prophets who were to arise in later generations, people like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Amos, Micaiah, and Hosea, was given to Moses with the Torah. Rabbi Simeon ben Lakish agrees.
Okay, we've made this point. I've said what I think about that already. Okay, keep going, Babette.
Extending the idea that all the books of the Hebrew Bible were given to Moses at Mount Sinai, some of the ancient rabbis claim that God gave two Torahs to Moses. One they call the Torah,
Sefer Tav.
okay, written Torah, comprising the 5 books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The others they call the Torah,
Shebe'al Peh.
great, oral Torah, made up of all the books of the prophets and the Midrash Aguda, the Talmud, and all decisions and explanations of Jewish law by rabbinic scholars through the ages.
It's an incredible idea. If I was at the time, I guess I would be a Sadducee. I am a Kohen, so I would be able to be a priest in the temple, which I think was a very good job. So maybe my ancestry is dictating my ideological proclivities, but I'm against this. Okay, keep going, Babette.
Agreeing that 2 Torahs were given by God to Moses and the Jewish people, other sages explained that God said to Moses, "Write down everything I tell you, for I have made a covenant with Israel." God had dictated the Torah, the Talmud, the Mishnah and Gemara, the Midrash, and even answers to all the questions leading to rabbis in the future would require that they were asked, what did God say to Moses on Mount Sinai? I guess they had a lot of tablets, or parchment to write this down. Clearly,
High
the ancient-
capacity data stick.
huh?
High capacity data stick.
Clearly, the ancient rabbis have added their own versions of what actually happened between God and Moses and the people of Israel at Mount Sinai. Their belief that 2 Torahs were given, including answers to all questions that might arise throughout all time, not only adds to the mystery of whatever occurred at Mount Sinai, but also grants special authority to all subsequent interpreters. This is an important point that should not be overlooked. As a result of their theory of 2 Torahs, rabbis now have the right to say that their own interpretations or decisions are the law according to Moses at Mount Sinai.
But let's get back to Revelation. Okay, Pam.
Do the Orthodox believe this idea of the 2 Torahs, and they do? Because it sounds a little
It would
loosey.
be very interesting to
Orthodox.
bring an Orthodox rabbi here and have him and me go at it, because I just can't bear this idea. But when I studied in yeshiva at various points, this was constantly talked about, yes.
But Moses, Maimonides apparently in that next box agrees with it.
Yeah, well, Maimonides was an Orthodox rabbi, so, Minya.
Did people really believe that questions could be asked and then answers were given because they may come up later in time? I mean, how can they do?
I
Like,
don't
how
know
can
if, I don't know if the Pharisees believed it or they just needed that to put in there in order to make the system work for them. But that's what they said. And that's what they say today.
they still believe that?
All answers are in the Torah. Is that what it is?
I really need to get an Orthodox person here in our Zoom. Maybe we can try and have them, you can ask them, do you believe this stuff? And hear it from the horse's mouth.
But that's one horse.
I get, you want me to get 3 horses? How many horses do you want,
Well,
Babette?
we're talking about 2 Torahs.
Yeah,
Cracking her up.
I think, Rabbi, I think what you'll need is a mediator.
Yeah, we don't want to offend anybody.
we're on Zoom. What can they do to us?
Not watch us.
Rabbi Bio, who came yesterday, he teaches Torah study on Thursdays, and he invited people to participate in his Torah study, which is on Zoom. And then he was worried he didn't want to compete with us. He said, oh, but your Torah study's on Wednesday, so it's okay. But if somebody wants to listen to him once, that would be very interesting to report on what he does. He's an Orthodox rabbi. He's teaching in a Jewish center context to people of all backgrounds. It's not an Orthodox synagogue, so that will affect how he presents things, of course. But
Might we ask him about his opinion on this whole issue?
I'm sure. But if somebody wants to watch him on Thursday and see what he does, that would be, you could report back. Maybe we'll learn a few tricks of what we could do here. Okay, other comments? If not, then Babette, you can keep going.
Okay, Rambam, the whole Torah. I believe with perfect faith that the whole Torah, now in our possession, is the same that was given to Moses, our teacher.
All right. This is Maimonides, the ultra-rationalist, the follower of Aristotle. And he's writing in the 12th century. So this is like 2,000 years after Moses. And he says that all of Judaism that he knows about is exactly the same as the Judaism in the time of Moses.
When you consider that the diaspora had occurred 1,200 years before, this was probably the one unifying factor that kept Judaism alive, no matter where the Jews were dispersed. It was the fact that this was the Torah that was to be taught as to the Jewish people. And this was the unifying factor, so that no matter where they went, if someone from Syria went to another country and attended a religious service somewhere, even though there may have been a temple or not, the point is, if they went somewhere and participated in a religious service, it would be the same no matter where. And to me, this was the unifying factor. So in a way, you can't really disparage it. In a sense, they kept the Jews unified through the centuries.
A very good point, Evelyn. And there is a theory that Maimonides thought exactly that way. And that's why he wrote this, that he knew better, but he wrote this because of what Evelyn said.
What year was Maimonides around?
1100.
1100. So, but okay. Maimonides, we're just reading a book for book club that's set around 1500 in Spain. He's 1100. So this is before the Inquisition then.
Yeah, but they had similar problems. He had to move a couple times because
Yeah, I saw his house, I remember, in Cordoba when I was there, but
he had to leave that house.
yeah, he had to, okay. Yes.
He ended up in Egypt because his family was forced to flee a couple times.
So it already was, things were starting already at that.
Oh,
time.
yeah, the Inquisition started before the quote official date. The church was already persecuting. When you think of England, what was it, 10 something, King Edward the First expelled the Jews from England and never let any Jews in. He owed them so much money that the only way he could relieve the debt was to say, get out of my country. And of course, they had to leave with nothing. And
That was true of Spain and Portugal too.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
There was
They-
also fanatical Muslims, so it was, you're stuck between the Christians and the Muslims. Yeah, so neither one was good.
But by the time
Um,
he got to Isabel,
There's a concept that Maimonides had of an esoteric doctrine. In his Guided Perplex, he wrote, I'm going to deliberately contradict myself. And I'm doing this because what I really believe is hidden. And it's your job, if you're a smart reader, to figure out what I really believe by working through my contradictions. I did a big term paper once in graduate school on this, on one of his doctrines of creation ex nihilo, which is creation out of nothing. And in one place he says, yes, he believes in it. In another place he said, no. And I went through the entire thing very carefully and trying to figure out what he really thought. And you know what I came up with?
No, so tell us.
No, I want you to guess.
we don't know.
I don't know, and I don't know what you're driving at, so.
Well, was I able to come up with a conclusion?
No.
Why?
Because he didn't say in one way or another.
Because any good philosopher knows if you actually contradict yourself in a way that can be solved, somebody's going to solve it pretty quickly, and then nobody's going to care anymore. So Maimonides made it so hard or basically impossible to resolve that people would continue to be arguing over what did Maimonides really believe about any given topic. So he even though he said he's going to deliberately contradict yourself and an astute reader can come up with the solution, an astute reader could not come up with the solution. That was deliberate.
Does he contradict himself about the giving of the Torah at Sinai?
I don't know exactly, but clearly this is the most important issue, and it would appear I don't have actual documentation in my mind, but I believe that he would have understood that the Torah was not the same Torah as that the Judaism of his time was not the same Torah, Judaism that had been practiced in the time of Moses, but he didn't want to say that because he was afraid that most of the Jews would not be able to understand that, and that.
In other words, keep the issue alive through controversy so that there's a constant dialogue going on.
And avoid saying something that's going to undermine the faith of the simple Jews. Most Jews were very simple. If you question their assumptions, they might convert to Islam or Christianity. So he didn't want to do things that would undermine their faith. So he was talking to the intellectuals at one time, but at the same time, he had to talk to intellectuals in such hidden language that the common people would not understand. So that was hard to do. That was very hard to do. So I can say whatever I want to your group, and I don't worry that the common folk in the temple are going to be upset by it because they don't care. But if I did, I would have to, everything I'd say would have to be obscured. And I'd have to, talk in riddles. So, okay, Babette, you can keep going.
The view of what happened at Sinai became the most dominant interpretation among Jews from early rabbinic times until the beginning of the 19th century. Philosopher Yehuda Halevi for example, writes that the people believe that Moses held direct communication with God, that his words were not creations of his own mind. They did not believe Moses had seen a vision in sleep, or that someone had spoken with him between sleeping and waking, so that he only heard the words in his imagination, but not with his ears. That he saw a phantom, and that afterwards pretended that God had spoken to him. Halevi concludes by citing proof of God speaking to Moses at Mount Sinai. He said there was no trickery there, for God's speaking was followed by God's writing. For God wrote the 10 Commandments on 2 tablets of precious stones and handed them to Moses.
Okay. So are you willing to accept any sort of possibility that God and you can communicate in some way? Pam, if you were in the biblical garden, what would some sort of divine inspiration look like?
Well, I kind of like the idea that God talks to a limited number of people. Moses is one of them. And we read our Torah because we want to hear what was said to those people. So
that sounds like a literalist, that you're willing to accept that God said everything that the Torah says God said.
yes.
Oh, okay. And is there and when you're in the biblical garden, can you feel some divine inspiration that's less direct? That maybe God doesn't speak to you, but that there's nevertheless God's presence somehow behind the olive tree?
Yeah, I definitely feel the presence. I don't feel like we're having personal conversations back and forth, but I feel God's presence.
I mean, I think you can't expect direct conversation, but if you can feel God's presence in some way, that's a big thing, right?
Well, that's part of the purpose of the biblical garden, is to create an atmosphere that shows God's presence.
And that would be good.
Yes.
And that I don't expect God to talk to me.
Yeah.
If I can feel God's presence, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that's where I am.
Well, that's good. Evelyn, is there any possibility of feeling God's presence in the morning in the kitchen when you're drinking coffee?
Yes, because I have a whole row of plants in my kitchen. And when I look at these plants and their varieties, not only are they good for the atmosphere, but I marvel at nature and realize, when I've seen in all my travels, all the wonderful scenery that I've done in my travels, I feel a God's presence. The fact that so much wonderful life has been created, some of it intelligent, some of it just lives, some of it is prey, and some of it is predator. And yet it's not that we live in harmony, but that all of this exists, is remarkable and shows that there was something greater than what we in our own human minds can possibly envision. So, yeah, I do believe in a God, and I do believe maybe he spoke to humans in the past. I don't think there's any direct communication at the moment, but that this was created is to me a marvel in my own mind.
Thank you, Evelyn. Steve?
Well, I still feel that, I notice God's presence within me anyway, when I see the morning sunrise, the evening sunset, and a rainbow. You know, I feel his presence within me when I see those things. It just enlivens me.
Yeah, when you see the sunset here in Arizona, that I think last night or the night before, there was unbelievable sunset. You know, it's hard not to think that this is God's way of sending out a message saying, try to relax, be happy, the world is beautiful. don't stress so much and maybe don't pollute so much. Marcia,
Well, even Einstein, who had all the reasoning, all the reason to believe in a more literal, scientific beginnings of Earth, he believed in a God having created all this, the world. So, I mean, even those people who you would think didn't give credence to God creating the world, he knew about going way back into millions and millions of years for the Big Bang or whatever. He still believed in God. So
but
I
he
mean,
wouldn't believe in this dual Torah idea.
I don't think he would.
No.
I can't speak for him, but I don't think so.
No, that's preposterous.
I don't even think he would believe in a single Torah given at that point, never mind the
Okay.
dual. The stories seem to just evolve to be able to satisfy their reasoning.
This is how we started. I think I started a little speech, and Bernie and a couple of others said, and Evelyn said, none of this is relevant. What happened, what we're concerned with is what it can mean today. And Einstein would say, there's a God it's not the God of the Torah exactly, but there's something, and that God can inspire us to the beauty of the world and the beauty of the universe. Einstein was more focused on the whole universe than just our Earth, and that this is a beautiful religious sentiment which can be cultivated.
Look at those new James Webb photos of universe that are coming
Yeah.
through, and they're absolutely spectacular.
Steve, did you want to say anything else? No. Okay, Riva.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with what many of us have said on this Zoom, and what Einstein said, and that is, I'm not a literalist, but I definitely believe in the miraculous.
Mhm. I'm not a literist, but I definitely believe in the miraculous. B,
I like that.
you agree with that?
Yeah.
Are you not a literist, but you believe in the miraculous? Is that true for you as well?
I like sort of a combination. Sometimes it's some and some of the other, but I like the idea of the miraculous.
And you're not, but you are a literalist, Pam. Okay.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, B.
Well, I tend to question. I question the parting of the Red Sea, of the sea. I question all of it. And I say to myself, yes, I believe it, but is it true? Or 600,000 in the desert. There's no record of anything in the desert in that period. So I don't know, but I tend to want to believe in all of it. But I have a very questioning mind.
Well, the archaeologists have found the remnants of 35 McDonald's on one city block that are dated back to around the same time. And so it appears there were a lot of people there getting McDonald's around that time, right before the revelation. Maybe they were getting in one last cheeseburger before the rules were going to come down. There was a rumor that there was going to be prohibited. So
There's over
yeah.
15 Starbucks and a surprise. So yeah.
The nice thing about being Reform is you can question everything.
Yes, but as I
Shoot.
said earlier here, I'm
Yeah.
beginning to think that allowing too much freedom of thought leads eventually into areas where I don't approve of, and I want to be able to have authority over what Reform Judaism turns into. And when people can question everything, they can move in any direction they want. And that was good in my generation, but the younger generation are taking it too far. I mean, I'm talking tongue in cheek here. So.
Yes, yes. No, but I think that's why a lot of us like being Reform, is we have the ability to question without being judged.
Mhm. Bernie?
Yeah, the fact that you question doesn't mean that you are denying. It simply means that you are questioning, thinking through all of the possibilities, and then saying, in spite of the fact, I still believe. And that is, in the final analysis, the most important aspect. The fact that you still become a believer. You can question whether the story is accurate or not. But as I said earlier, how relevant is it? Okay, it's part of the history as such. It's a story, whether it was actual or whether it was contrived or whether there was a grain of truth in it, but maybe not the whole truth, And so, but again, in the final analysis, all of these stories were leading to a specific purpose, the formation of the religion of Judaism per se, and its effect on the populace at the time. And so my feelings are, take these stories with a grain of salt. I don't take them literally, and yet at the same time, I feel they are leading to a specific purpose and the belief in Judaism. So whether somebody agrees with me or not, I don't know, but whatever.
Donna, Lorraine, Shirley, comments?
I'm just finding this very, very interesting.
Okay.
It's a little different than studies I've had before. I find it very, very interesting.
We're an open-minded group, I guess. Babette.
Well, the thing is, it's sort of, you can't have one without the other. Don't we say Mishabera every service? Do we pray for our health or our loved one's health? I mean, you can't, it's hard to separate. If you can do this now, how can you deny what was then?
Very true. Marcia, Minya, Steve, Pam. Okay. Babette, you can keep reading about Orthodox Jews.
Orthodox Jews continue to claim that God gave the Torah, both the written law and the oral law, to Moses on Mount Sinai. It was a one-time gift or revelation, a complete Torah with everything that Jews would ever need to know was presented to Moses and passed on afterwards from generation to generation as Torah Sinai. Torah from Sinai. As proof of this claim, today's Orthodox authorities, like Halevi in his time, cite the Torah text itself. It says they argue that God spoke all these words. Therefore, they conclude that is obviously what happened. A few Orthodox thinkers, however, disagree, like Rabbi David Hartman of Jerusalem. They do not believe that the Torah given at Mount Sinai was a complete, finished system. Hartman explains that belief in the giving of the Torah at Sinai does not necessarily imply that the full truth has already been given and that our task is only to unfold what was already present in the fullness of the founding moment of revelation. What happened at Mount Sinai, he says, gave the community a direction, an arrow pointing toward a future filled with many surprises. The Sinai moment of revelation invites one and all to acquire the competence to explore the terrain and extend the road. It does not require passive obedience and submission to the wisdom of the past.
So this is the guy that founded the institute I studied at this summer for 2 weeks.
Oh.
He's not alive anymore. His son runs it. What do you think of his idea? Do you think this is what we believe? That the Torah given at Mount Sinai, whatever it was not a finished system, that there was a lot of development after that. Comments on Hartman? Riva,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
you like what he says?
Yeah. that it wasn't a finished document.
Okay,
But that still says that the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, and
right.
that's where I kind of I can't accept that too easily.
Okay, so it's still orthodox, it's bending the belief, but it's still a little too orthodox for Marcia, so you would accept that there was some holy moment there between God and the Jewish people, maybe the giving of the Ten Commandments,
Right.
but not the giving of the Torah per se. Okay, Pam, you don't like Hartman?
I stepped out for a moment, so I can't comment.
Okay. Hartman says that the Torah given at Mount Sinai was not a complete finished system. All right. Let's
But he still says the Torah was given.
right.
That's where I.
Let's do the box bet because this is from the 1976 San Francisco platform of Reform Judaism. In Reform Judaism, we've had a number of platforms which stated what we believe. The most famous was the 1985 Pittsburgh platform, but this is a later one. So and Harvey Field's quotes from this, from 1976. Then there was one after this in 1999 in Pittsburgh, but the Harvey Field's book was published before that. So he didn't know about that. Okay.
Okay, Torah for Reform Jews. Torah results from the relationship between God and the Jewish people. The records of our earliest confrontations are uniquely important as to lawgivers and prophets, historians and poets give us a heritage whose study is a religious imperative and whose practice is our chief means to holiness. Rabbis and teachers, philosophers and mystics, gifted Jews in every age amplified the Torah tradition. For millennia, the creation of Torah has not ceased, and Jewish creativity in our time is adding to the chain of tradition.
Okay, what do you think?
In other words, what they are saying is that, yes, we believe in Torah, but as society changes, we change with it, in essence. This is what I glean from it at any rate.
Embellished it.
No,
Yes, augment it, shall we say.
For thousands of years, the creation of Torah has continued.
not ceased. It hasn't ceased.
There's a chain of tradition, but that chain of tradition, it doesn't stay exactly the same.
So it's saying Torah is evolving.
Yes, progressive revelation and a relationship with God. Bernie's had a childhood friend that he's been friendly with for 80 years or 70 years or 60 years. But that relationship hasn't always been the same. When this guy was working his first career, the relationship was a certain way. Then that friend of Bernie's switched careers and the relationship changed. Later, they lived near each other and the relationship changed. Then they lived further away, the relationship changed. The other guy got divorced once or twice or three times. The relationship with Bernie changed. Over the course of time, our relationship with God changes.
And we see things differently, is what you're saying, as we progress through life, because we have the background to see things differently.
And God sees things differently. God grows and develops and matures and makes mistakes just like we do. God is not perfect in that sense. God is part of this relationship. Every relationship is holy, but no relationship can be perfect.
You're attributing, Rabbi, you are attributing human traits to God.
Oh, no, Evelyn, don't tell the people in New York Rabbinic Association. I'll get thrown out. Do you like that or you hate that?
I don't think God should have traits that are human. Humans, to me, are flawed in some way, and the God that we worship should not have those flaws. And it bothered me in the Bible when God would have a temper tantrum. And so I don't believe in that kind of a God.
So there's a book that this afternoon at the meeting of the Adult Education Committee is in a secret location at 1:30. But I'll give you one hint where it may be held. And where one of the possibilities is doing a course on a new book by a woman with a very long Greek name who's British, called God and Anatomy, where she describes the God of the Torah as very much like a real person, like with feet and hands and a face and emotions and genitals, and like totally not the opposite of what we later attribute to God as an abstract being. Maimonides believed in God as Evelyn believes in Maimonides as God. And I believe in Maimonides' God, by the way, too.
But that's putting it back to making it into like an idol.
Well, this scholar is saying that's the God of the Bible. And she tries to prove that, but then Maimonides has the God of Aristotle, not the God of the Bible, which may be better, maybe worse. I'm not judging here. I'm just I'm trying to throw out different provocative ideas to get you upset.
Yes.
Thank you.
Why should God be considered as having sex, male, when so much on this earth that is alive is sexless in a sense? The single cell animals or the lower forms of life reproduce. They don't need a male and a female. This is typical of higher forms of living creatures as such. And where do we come off attributing this particular aspect to God? God is supposed to be such a supreme being. I think it is arrogant of man to assume that God has made us in his image. That I simply absolutely cannot believe. And I believe that we as a life form are evolving, and maybe mankind, if it survives another 1,000,000 years like the dinosaurs did, we will be a different form, a different type of creation. Well, I think we are a work in progress as such. I don't want to think of God as a work in progress.
And I think that'll be our final summary for today. Thank you, Evelyn, for waxing eloquent on the nature of God. Later this afternoon, God is going to give a talk about Evelyn in retaliation. We turn it back to Steve for any announcements and the final prayer.
Okay, I'm gonna let Reva do her announcements first, and then I'll make a couple comments.
I don't have any other announcements other than being very careful of what you receive from the temple so that you know exactly how to get on to the next meeting. So I'm happy so many of you finally were able to join this Zoom today. We have 2 classes already in progress at the temple. You know about them, 4 Gods and Gratitude. We'll have more classes coming on later this year.
Okay. Also, Friday, March 3rd is going to be where 2 members of our congregation will be presented the Kavod Awards. So we want you to remember the date and be sure to come to temple and honor these 2 individuals. And I'm not going to release their names yet.
Why not?
I don't know, just create suspense, I guess.
It's
Well,
a
I thought
mystery.
It would be nice to know who they are, to be able to support them that evening.
All right, well, one is Pam Katz and the other is Bonnie Longmire.
Both
Wonderful.
well deserved.
Yes.
Pam,
So
Yeah.
Make sure you put that date on your calendar.
We also have two special singers this Shabbos, and that's the Sugars, who will be singing at the service. They sing beautifully.
Okay. Let us conclude then with the final blessing together. Baruch
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu melech haolam,
asher
asher
natan
natan Torah emet, v'chayim olam natan b'tochenu.
Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah Adonai,
Noten
noten haTorah.
Blessed is Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us and teaches the truth, implanting us eternal life. Blessed is Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen. Everyone have a fabulous rest of the week, and hopefully see you Friday night at services, and if not, then at another time. Be
So
safe.
I will not be here next week. I will
Okay.
miss it, but I have an appointment that was made long before, so I will not be here next week. But have a good discussion.
Thank you. Take care.
interesting discussion, yeah.
Yeah.